So, Miguel, are you there?
I am right here.
Okay, then you can go ahead with your presentation.
Okay. Uh, so, this was my first project. It was in central India, and I was recruited as a doctor. Being an obstetrics and gynecology resident, I ended up going to a project that has a bit of obstetrics, and I'll get to that in a second. I was very lucky in it because it's not that easy to find something with the specific wishes of each applicant. When I was interviewed, I was asked if there was anything that I would prefer to do, and I said something related to obstetrics or maternal care would be good. And I was also asked if there was anywhere that I would not like to go to, and I said, well, I just don't want to go to a war zone as a first project. So, very broad questions. Those are my answers, and I ended up going to India. And I'm trying to flip the slide, but it doesn't work, Suzanne. Suzanne? Oh, there we go. Yeah. So, a bit of context. In central India, you can see in the eastern part of India, there's a conflict between the government and a communist Maoist insurgency. And uh, Susan, I still don't have control of the mouse. I'll just keep on talking. And in the south of Chhattisgarh, which is the state pointed out in red, there's a city called Bijapur, and around that city of Bijapur, there were the areas around it have no access to healthcare, or the government has no access to them. So the project pretty much started up to serve those populations around the big city, not inside the big city, and put up mobile clinics. The concept of mobile clinic is pretty much you drive with a team for about an hour, let's say, for example, you walk for another hour. Everyone has a backpack with drugs and water and registry books and band-aids and stuff to treat people. You put up a small clinic, a tent or a cabin, something. You treat for about 4 to 5 hours, let's imagine. You pack everything back up, you walk another hour back, you drive another hour back, and you're back home. And this would go every day to different locations, sometimes to more than one location a day. And that was the main purpose of this project. And I still cannot click on the PowerPoint. Yeah. Pretty much what we did there was we served every age, um, adults, children, male, female, and of course, as Suzanne said, regardless of any side they may be taking or not taking in this conflict, we did primary health care, we did EPI, which is an expanded program on immunization, we vaccinated kids, we did antenatal care, we treated malnutrition and tuberculosis. And um, as the project went on, we decided to set up, or the MSF decided to set up another center in the city of Bijapur, the Mother and Child Health Center, which is pretty much a small hospital. It has an OPD, an outpatient department, and an IPD, an inpatient department, with 18 beds. And we had those 18 beds would serve children mostly, pediatric population, women that delivered with us, and TB patients. As a bit of context, we in living conditions. This is a view of, or some of the views that we had from our house. It was a fairly big house, very lush, lots of vegetation, very warm, up to 40 degrees Celsius in the summer. We'd had monsoon with lots of rain, where you would necessarily get very, very, very wet from your home to workplace. In terms of safety, it was a very soft project. We had a theoretical curfew at midnight, different than other projects where you can't even walk out the door of your compound. We could walk to work, we could ride a bicycle to work. So that was very, very relaxed because, again, there is a conflict, but it didn't really affect much the population of the city where we were. These are some pictures of our house. We had a big living room, 6 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. You can see an air conditioning on the picture on the right. It does not mean that we had one working. The power supply was very poor, so whenever we had those days above 40 degrees Celsius, we would turn it on. It would go on for about 23 seconds and then just die before it even started getting cold. So yeah, that was a bit hard. The kitchen on the left, whoops, no problem. The kitchen on the left shows a meal prepared when you arrive at home, which is something that you get a lot. You get to focus on your work, so you have someone that actually helps out with cooking, with cleaning. Going to the tasks that I was responsible for. On the next slide. I manage pretty much obstetrical cases, gynecological cases, and something that is completely foreign to me, tuberculosis and multi-drug resistant tuberculosis cases. I was on call 24/7. One of my main tasks, as Suzanne said, was to teach both midwives and Indian doctors. All of this respecting the principles of MSF, of course. Some people say that MSF stands for Médecins Sans Frontières. So we spent a lot of our time meeting and going through a medical meeting and a morning meeting and a security meeting and a TB meeting and with lots of meetings with the Ministry of Health to try to put up, in this particular project, to try to put up a functioning operation theater and blood bank, which was quite a challenge. We had to report on a monthly basis, as Suzanne said, and we had to plan and develop the medical care that was involved in both mobile clinics and the health center. This is some of the examples of one of my main tasks. Training. We had a course at our project, the Advanced Life Support and Obstetrics course, which is an internationally acknowledged course, and we did pretty much 7 sessions, myself and the expat pediatrician, to prepare the midwives, nurses to attend that course, and the local doctors. That went quite well. There's a lot of bedside teaching, there's a lot of case discussion. So this is one of the main things that you do while you're in the field. And one thing that was interesting in this project was whenever patients, that one of the big tasks was to run the TB program, and that implied getting drugs, organizing drugs, having the patients come every 2 weeks to pick up their medication, and sometimes they didn't, so we had to go out to the community and literally grab a team of 3 or 4, a driver, someone responsible for security, a health professional, nurse or doctor, and a health educator or translator, and drive through sometimes very tricky roads, through amazing landscape, one must say. And you can see on the next slide a couple of pictures of a family that we visited. Pretty much we were looking for a patient. He didn't show up. That's one of the big issues of TB. It's a very long treatment, goes for at least 6 months. And whenever a patient starts feeling better, he or she will think, well, I don't really need to walk another 2 hours or take a bus that'll take me an hour and a half to go get drugs. I don't need them anymore. I'm fine. So they stop treatment. They interrupt or even default. So we had to go after them. This requires planning, requires meetings, requires organizing cars, requires talking to local authorities. And as you can imagine, I did none of this in my former work and experience as a doctor. So a lot of adaptation, a lot of creativity, a lot of diplomacy, and but it's an amazing experience. Of course, you get to know things you did not know about yourself. There are a lot of challenges. On the bottom left, you have a very interesting typical scene for India, at least. You're driving a car. You're on the left side, of course. That's interesting too. Bunch of cows on the road. Guys riding bikes insanely with no helmets. People tend to almost die every day while in traffic, but somehow don't. So yeah, you have to adapt to that and find your way through a different culture, and do not have the illusion that you'll change things, because you won't. You just have to make the best out of it. And on the right is an adult patient that we treated. He's below 30 kilos in weight, and he was mid 40s, 50s, with a very, very severe and chronic TB disease. And of course, as you can imagine, as with a bunch of young, unexperienced doctors and with a background of obstetrics and gynecology, this is something I had never seen. And that's where the whole team comes together. On the right is a nurse, an emergency nurse, that had already been in 4 projects and had a lot of experience. That, a medical coordinator, your peer, in my case, a pediatrician, we all come together and brainstorm on what could be done and how we could treat this. There's an amazing platform online on telemedicine where you post cases, symptoms, radiographies, X-rays, and lab values, and you get an international community being centralized in one platform and answering within 4 to 5 hours, which is really something. And from these challenges, you are very frustrated by some things. On the next slide, we'll see 2 wards of a hospital that we visited while evaluating external hospitals to send our patients to refer patients to. This is a university hospital to which we referred, for example, our obstetrical patients that needed a C-section. That was a 4-hour drive out of our health center, because the district hospital did not have an operation theater back then. And you can see the pediatric ward below with at least 40 beds stuffed in one room and 2 nurses. On the top right, you'll see the TB wards, where usually patients should be isolated and there should be a lot of air circulation and open windows and all of that. But no, you get a contagious disease in a room full of people. You do, however, win some battles. And on this other slide, we see on the left a CPAP, which is a ventilation mechanism, something that we easily find in any hospital in Germany to ventilate patients that need it. And we built it with a bottle of oxygen, a bottle of water, a couple of tubes, and managed to handle a case that would be ridiculous in my context back home of pneumonia, but that led to the death of many children in this region in India, because they would just get sick. They would go to a local healer, they would get some herbs, they would get their skin burned because it was a lung problem, so they would just burn the thorax, and would come up to us after 3 or 4 days of disease course in a very degraded state. On the right, however, is a different situation. This is the operation theater of the district hospital, with which we worked to get up. We worked to recruit anesthesiologists, to recruit gynecologists. It's not all our credit, of course, but this is a photo of the first C-section that was done in about 2 years, I think. And yeah, so you lose one, you win some. There is to this work a lot of fun too. This is just out of fun. It's these are images of the Holi Festival of Colors in India, but you do have to be aware that whenever you're there, depending on the project, but it was that case for me. I was 24/7 on call, as said, And even when having fun, you could be called in for work, which happened on that very day. And I got called in for a complicated tear after a delivery, which you can see in the picture coming right up. Yes, there you go. And ended up suturing a patient with, well, not in a very typical state. I hope she did not get a trauma out of this. Yeah, so you learned a lot, you see a lot. You'll be overwhelmed every single day, but you will get to learn a lot about different diseases, the same diseases you treat back home, but in a different way, and a lot about yourself too. So yeah, that was my project in a nutshell. And feel free to drop me an email if you have any questions or ask questions right now. Thank you.